Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Truly Unfortunate by C.A. King, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. Her small toes wiggled in protest. Warm feet had no business touching a cold wooden floor. Truly searched for her slippers, but they were missing. Without them, she'd be much louder walking about, but there was no choice. She was thirsty. Without a sip or two of water, she would never fall back to sleep. Trying to take as few steps as possible, she crept in slow motion. The creaking groans of the wooden floor beneath her needed to be kept as silent as possible. That wasn't an easy task in her flannel nightgown. She had outgrown it at some point in the last year, but it hadn't yet been replaced and probably wouldn't be anytime soon. The bathroom light hummed as it warmed up, adjusting the level of brightness as it did. She hopped up on a footstool to reach for her cup, only to find it, too, was missing. Her head bent down to sip from the tap, but her long hair fell in the sink instead. Even tied back in a braid, it was always causing her problems. A sigh escaped slightly parted lips. The only way she was going to have a drink was if she ventured downstairs. She opted to sit at the top of them instead. If she listened closely to the chattering below, an opportunity to sneak around her mother's party was sure to arise. There always came a point when everyone grew tired and fell asleep. That was the best part of every evening. "Full house!" Gina yelled, tossing her cards on the table. "Aces and kings!" Her laughter rolled in waves as she pulled the pile of miscellaneous items into her stash. The group was well past the use of money for the night. That ran out after the first 2 rounds. Gina twirled a pair of men's boxer shorts around in the air. "If you plan on playing another round, you'll have to wager with your services," Tim laughed. "If I win, I'll trade him to you, Gina." He fired off a wink across the table. "You aren't far behind me," Edgar scoffed. "These ladies are cheating." His voice raised, but smile widened. His cards landed in the middle of the table face down. The hand he'd been dealt wasn't worth showing. He ran his fingers over his stomach, playing with his own belly button in full view of anyone willing to watch. "How about you get me a beer so I can see those buns?" Gina asked, chuckling at her man trying to be sexy. He didn't have a clue what that actually entailed. For her, making people enjoy her movements was a profession. Strippers relied on those talents for large tips. "You laugh now, woman," Edgar said. "Wait till after the company leaves and I'll be having my way with you." The sounds of small footsteps above them caught his attention. "Truly's up, wandering about again." "Aw," Michelle cooed. "That's adorable. I don't know how you do it, raising a child and all. How old is she now?" "She'll be turning 9 real soon," Gina replied, twisting off the cap on a new bottle of beer. She gulped back a quarter of it before coming up for air. "I didn't realize you two had been together that long," Michelle commented, exchanging glances between them. "Oh, sorry, I just assumed." "No need to be sorry," Edgar said. "I love the kid to pieces. She might as well be my own." "Gina," Michelle said, "I'm totally jealous. How'd you find such a great guy?" "He was God sent, that's for sure," Gina smirked. "I was down on my luck and made some poor choices. When you have nothing and are hungry, you'll do anything for a meal and place to stay." Her eyes dulled. "I was no different." "Oh my God, girl," Michelle blurted out. "I had no idea. What happened?" Gina shrugged her shoulders, her bleach blonde ponytail swaying behind them. "I met a crooked man. He wasn't much to look at, rather creepy, tall and thin. He offered me room and board if I serviced him. The minute we found out I was expecting, he tossed me out the door, said it wasn't in the cards. He was always big on checking his fortune before doing anything." She rolled her eyes. "I didn't believe in all that hocus pocus, but went along with it." "No," Michelle gasped. "What we had was a business arrangement," Gina stated. "Nothing more. I couldn't stand him. He smelled like the woods, that damp, earthy smell after it rains." She shivered, goosebumps forming on her arms. "I was 17 with a newborn baby and few options, especially with Truly's psycho dad out of the picture. It was total abandonment. I never saw him again. That's when I became a dancer." "I met her a few months later," Edgar added, putting his hand on hers. "Maybe it was in the stars." He chuckled. "My mom used to fool around with reading cards. She always said she could see the future." "Did she use one of those fancy decks?" Tim asked, ribbing his friend. "Nah," Edgar answered. "We didn't have money for that. She used an ordinary deck just like we are." "If these hold the future," Gina joked, "why didn't you know you were going to lose all your clothes?" The single card flew through the air, landing face up directly in front of her boyfriend. Edgar picked it up and twirled it around. Ace of spades, he declared. That there is the death card. You planning on knocking me off, woman? Gina laughed. For what? You got an insurance policy I don't know about? No, ma'am, Edgar replied. It's much safer to be a broke bastard, if you ask me. That way there's nothing to collect if I'm gone. Gina leaned forward. Her lips grazed his. The phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. Dang, she exclaimed. Charity's a no-show again tonight. Looks like I have to go to work. Hey, Edgar complained. Never had a chance to win my clothes back and take a few off you ladies. You know we could use the extra money, Gina argued. Besides, you can dream about me. In the morning, I'll make it all worthwhile. Promise? Edgar smirked. Promise, Gina replied, waggling her eyebrows suggestively. His own boxers hit him in the face. Put on some clothes until then. She glanced at the bottle in his hand. Guess I'll take a cab. No need. We'll drop you, Tim offered. I'm not willing to wait till morning. He grabbed Michelle's waist and pulled her in. Hold on to your high heels, baby. You are in for one hell of a ride tonight. I feel like I could go for hours. Edgar gulped back the last swallow of his beer, watching the trio leave. He glanced down. And I get stuck all hot and bothered, he muttered, cracking his neck. He tossed aside the briefs, opting for track pants instead. One foot tangled going in, causing him to stumble. Frustration mutated into anger. His fist came down on the table, sending empty bottles toppling over. Only one remained standing. Waste not, want not, he huffed, grabbing Gina's still half-full beer and swooshing it back. Alcohol merely served to further fuel his rage. When he let Gina and her kid move in, he anticipated her taking on a more physical role in his life. It sounded good in theory, a stripper at his beck and call, bending to his every distorted fantasy. Instead, he ended up with a woman who spent more time pleasing other men than she did him. What made it even worse, he seemed to always be the one left cleaning up the messes. He tossed a dish into the sink, not caring whether or not it broke. His neck twisted from side to side, letting out another loud crack. His fists clenched tightly to the point of his knuckles turning white. It was a volcano ready to explode. His heart pumped double time, red creeping into his face, gauging his rising body temperature like an old-fashioned thermometer. He glanced around, sizing up which wall was going to be the recipient of his mounting fury. Choosing one wasn't going to be easy. They all already had numerous spots poorly patched from previous outbursts. Glancing up at the ceiling, a grin more crooked than a used car salesman crept over his face. His tongue darted out, wetting partly open lips. Grabbing his belt off the table, he headed to the stairs, taking each one as a predator stalking prey. A pitter-patter of scurrying feet deepened the lines of the sinister smile on his face. His pace quickened. He snapped the belt between his hands. The silver door handle felt cold against his skin. It turned easily in his grip. It always did. He peeked in at a bundle of shaking blankets in the middle of a single mattress. Truly, Edgar called out, you've been a bad girl. You left your slippers and cup laying around. You know there are rules in my house. I'm going to have to punish you. I've already thrown them out. You need to learn to behave. He closed the door behind him.